Welcome, everybody. Unfortunately, we can't see who's on the stream right now. If you had appreciate you guys joining us. We're going to dive right in and Christine, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Christine Malfair, and I have a business I started in 2010, Malfair Marketing, really helping hoteliers simplify marketing, whether that's a service that I offer for them or through coaching. So I'm a hotel marketing CMO, former GM, and I've been in hotels for 26 years. And yeah, I wrote tacos and coffee. So two things I absolutely love, but not necessarily together.
Hey, I'm always giving that a try. I'll give that a shot. I'm all for tacos. So.
I did have somebody tell me that it was a really good combination. So to have tacos and coffee, I'm all for, maybe it's in the form of a breakfast taco. That would pass. And today in this Revenue Reframe with Cory here and with you, I'm going to be addressing the leisure segment of hotel and hospitality and looking at largely the mindset shift with the OTAs and what future indicators are telling us about where this is all going with direct.
Wonderful. And I am on the other side of the fence. Cory Falter here at Lure Agency, partner. I'm also the president of the HSMAI here in San Diego. Proud father of spring breaking twins that are currently in Barcelona. And I'm a crazy 80s music fanatic. I'm gonna handle more on the group side. That's where we support our independent hotels and helping them understand the importance and how to capture more direct group business. And as we mentioned before, this is by no means a slam on OTAs or third parties. This is just maybe a little bit way of understanding the landscape and how to really take advantage of it. It's really not that difficult. Christine?
Yeah.
Super.
And I'll add, oftentimes on LinkedIn, people will think, oh, you're anti-OTA. And so I'm glad you brought that up because I do talk about the OTAs on LinkedIn, but more so from a pro management. I am definitely pro management. I never have once said, get rid of the OTAs, full stop. But yeah, it's a pro management approach. It's putting control back in the seat of those who are delivering the experience. That's the hotels.
Wonderful. All right, we're going to jump right in here.
Yeah. So really, this is a lot of what is happening out there. There is these widespread concerns around how else are we going to get the business? Or we've probably all heard it said, OTAs are a necessary evil, or even competing with them is costly and complicated. How can we possibly do our own marketing to compete? And, or we can't do it without them. But I think at some point, all hoteliers have said, I hate paying all this commission. Or maybe it's, I trust the OTAs more than our own channels. And so that becomes then default operating system for how they manage their revenue. So I'm going to give Cory the thumbs up if you're wondering where he's advancing the slides. So I know because this is me. Now, this is a very pixelated photo, which shows how long ago this was. But this was me in my first year as GM. So you can see from the vintage level of hardware I'm using there, how difficult it was. But yeah, these are all the things that I was thinking when I was back in the GM seat. And so this has been going on for quite some time. A lot of these thoughts around paying commissions and how to build your direct channel. So I wrote, been there, done that. So the sentiment overall is that there's this conflict about dependence. 65% of hoteliers say they have a love-hate relationship with the OTAs. Love the business, hate the commissions. Love the business, don't like how we feel a little bit hamstrung at times. Concerned about costs. So without a doubt, 70% of independent hoteliers feel that OTA commissions are too high. When I read this, I was like, oh, I want to talk to the 30% that don't think it's too high. That would be interesting. They're frustrated by the lack of control, which Cory had mentioned before, this lack of control with 58% of hoteliers say that they feel that they have little to no control over their presence. And there's this strained trust that hoteliers 22% are actually thinking that the OTAs are an ally, that they're a partner. Oh, and then, sorry, I have a duplication there, but
that's important.
More than 60% of hoteliers say they want to increase direct bookings and reduce the OTA dependencies. It's something that a lot that hoteliers want, but it's more a matter of like, how am I going to go about this? And really, what are the risks involved? We're going to talk about the widespread costs. So, of course, we know there's the big profit payouts, which is something that typically the clash between direct and the OTA bookings are around this profitability piece. And so I did a little math here to show that, because oftentimes we put our inventory out to the OTAs and I'm paying commission or even just receiving a net rate. It often can be swept under the rug. And so when we're looking at breaking it down here, so for every $1,000 in revenue, hotels pay out $250 for that booking. So when we think about other costs, when they talk about the rising cost of PPC, Google Ads, right? It's becoming more competitive and that dialogue goes up and down. But we actually, when we think about the rising costs compared to $250 for an acquisition, there's no Google PPC that's $250. There's nothing quite this high in how to acquire your guests. And so conversely, looking at direct, for every $1,000 in revenue, hotels pay out $140. And I chose 14%. And some people would say, how do you get to 14%, Christine? The average direct booking, like hard cost around between marketing, your marketing team, all your activities that you're doing hovers around 4%. And the 10% is actually just maybe the incentive. So if you're saying book direct, save 10%, which a lot of hotels are, or they're offering some other incentives. So that might be a free this or a free that or whatever it may be. So even with all of that included is like 14%. It's a stark contrast between the payouts. I remember going back to that ancient old slide of me sitting there at the desk. And I remember doing front office training with the staff and looking at, here's your different options for bookings. And of course, we still hear stories around guests calling in and being told you should go book on the OTAs if you got that rate there. And I, of course, raise your hand in the chat or wherever you may be if you have either heard that from a hotel that you've worked with or preach that to a hotel that you've worked with. We have the other thing that we hear a lot about is this loss of guest loyalty. So an important stat from TripTease, which I think really is a good piece of data to remember. Only 20% of OTA guests actually return to book. So they come to your hotel, they have a fantastic experience, and then they end up going back to the OTAs. 80% of all of those OTA visitors. And so then, of course, you're then paying another $250. So now if you take two bookings from an OTA guest for an average of $1,000 in revenue, you've paid $500 to acquire that client. And you can see how quickly this climbs up. So undoing the pattern and the OTAs have gotten very good, of course, at offering incentives, rewards that keep people in there that get to a certain status where they're unlocking things. So not having your own loyalty program is pretty important, don't you think, Cory?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. As I love to say, capture a guest's heart, you capture their wallet.
Yes, very true. And hopefully in this case, then we can get people between capturing their heart, capturing an email or something in there, and reintroducing the opportunity to book direct. So that leads to the third point, which is the lack of guest data. Hotels with 60 to 70% OTA revenue. So that's the majority, sadly enough. The average independent hotel is looking at a total revenue contribution from the OTAs of 60 to 70%. If they're not capturing the data and they have a CRM, that means 60 to 70% of the data in their database is dead, it's unusable. And that's because of the masked emails that come in from the OTAs. Now, there's different things that you can do. And I know that technology is helping us overcome, and I say us as in hoteliers, overcome that masked email dilemma. But it's still a big piece to say 60 to 70% in dead database. That's pretty shocking.
Big time.
And then one that a lot of people don't think about is dollars out of your community. And when we think about 15% to 30% going to a global conglomerate, that is 15 to 30% of the revenue piece that, is out of your hotel that comes out of local community spending. And I think that's a big one that a lot of people don't think about. So there's just so many ways that hotel would spend money within its own community if you think about renovations, new projects, new team members, everything that they would be buying is going to be impacted by this loss of revenue and this loss of local spending. And then the other one is risk to your reputation. So you just have to go on Reddit, as I often do, and I look at tales from the front desk. There's a thread on Reddit, and I just find it absolutely fascinating to hear other frontline staff talk about some of the pain that they've experienced, some of the sort of injustice that they've had to deal with at the front desk from guests who were not happy with the OTA service, but then projected that at the front desk. And so there's the guest doesn't care whether they just associate that booking with you, and they don't care that it was Expedia or Booking.com. So largely you're the brunt of that reputation loss, which is a pretty sad thing, because I know, Cory, you talk a lot about reputation and trust. And if you're coming to the front desk and that's already compromised, you're not in a good spot.
It's funny you say that. I'd read that horror stories when COVID hit, people trying to get their rebate back from an OTA. They don't understand that relationship there. And you're absolutely right. Once the fact that you're putting customer service in someone else's hands, you're in the business of selling an experience, is extremely risky.
Yes.
You're not selling a widget, right? You're selling a human experience, which is really mind-blowing. So yes, great point.
And then think about hotels have to work really hard to then overcome that, to try and put things right, to try and get things back on the rails. So there's a lot of time and effort and dollars that can be spent out of the hotel to try and make things right for the person.
While we're obsessed with TripAdvisor reviews, by the way, right?
Yeah. And that shows up in TripAdvisor reviews. And they may say things like, our reservations got screwed up. They don't ever say that was for a third party. So we've talked about the widespread sort of results from a cost, reputation, loyalty, and repeat guest booking. But there are impacts for ownership. One is that commissions cream up to profit. So depending on the structure or ownership payouts or ownership profit, that I know can be adjusted per property, but largely there is impact across the board. The asset value, right? The decreased asset value of not having your own guest relationships. And I think that there's a lot of businesses whose valuation is built on the depth and width of their guest database, their guest data. And so without having that information, it's going to impact the future sale price potential of that property. The brand equity, this ties into point number 2 as well. With little investment in the brand, the hotel becomes the commodity. And with little brand value, again, you have weak brand equity, again, tying back to decreased asset value. The lack of strategic leverage, without that data, it's hard to make decisions. We know this. And then, of course, dependency risk on third party. All of your eggs in one basket, or 60 to 70% of your eggs in one basket. All of a sudden, the vulnerability risk is super high. If anything ever happened to the OTAs, what would happen if there's no other investments in marketing and technology in the background? And then the other thing that we did touch on in terms of what we're seeing on Reddit is that impact for the staff team. like one that, with fewer growth opportunities. So if you're outsourcing your bookings to the OTAs, team isn't necessarily increasing in their marketing skills, their sales skills, their reservation skills. And so there's less investment in in-house talent. The lower morale, again, hit the Reddit thread up and you'll see what's going on there. Increased workload without recognition. And this is taking care of trying to make situations right at the front desk, regardless of whether that person took the booking or one of their peers took the booking or whether it was an OTA, still on their shoulders to handle and make things right. So there's more guest confusion and mismatched expectations, because how can an OTA really, on a shop by price model, truly share what the brand has to offer? And then there's reduced sense of ownership. So if the front desk is just processing OTA bookings all the time and they're not part of the process, I think that's going to certainly decrease motivation. So you're detached, your motivation is down. What does it matter? I'm just here processing reservations. And then we have this misaligned goal, which I've worked with hotels where there's a drive, get the direct bookings, invest in marketing, and then the revenue management teams are doing something entirely different. And so we have this misaligned goals and misaligned direction within the same team that should be lining up behind the same goal, behind revenue, behind profitability. So yeah, Cory, anything to add on any sort of stories or comments there, or anything from anybody in the chat around something that they hadn't considered before or hadn't viewed as a risk before?
Yeah, I don't see anybody weighing in here yet, but like we talked about before, I think whatever the personal impact, it's relevant, right? Ownership got a different impact and a different why than the people on the property, and that whole element of what you talked about, misaligned goals, because those two whys are so different, right?
Right.
And the goals of the owner could be, and is probably a lot of those are vastly different. And I think one of you touched on is EBITDA. The whole resale value, that's something you and I stumbled upon. I didn't really even realize when it's valued for resale based on the operating costs, if the dependency or where those operating costs are factored into that. And that's a huge impact, I would think, that ownership would really want to know about. And that's one out of all, but it's just weird that in our research, it's stumbling upon these things that are just eye-opening, going, wow, I hadn't thought about that implication, because it's so foreign to sales and marketing aspect of it.
Ownership, yeah, sometimes is in it for the hospitality, and other times it's in for real estate. It's for different reasons. And so these things are really good to put a spotlight on. Okay. So with all of the widespread concerns and the widespread bump and the negative sentiment that GMs, revenue teams, marketing feel around this, and the costs and just the impact for all, but we're still seeing 60 to 70% of the total bookings for independent hotels. Now, I know that's a little bit less, and I know that for the large brands, they're battling as well to keep their numbers low. It's a focus for them. But in Europe, it is closer to 80%. And so once upon a time, so I have a client that I've worked with for 14 years. And when we first started working together, there was like a 15% OTA contribution. And we started to see that climb and caution and doing other things. And there was a disconnect between what revenue management was doing and what I was doing in driving direct. And so the two are essentially trying to battle for that same room, especially over peak seasons. So I think that we've seen those numbers really low in OTA contribution. And now look at them. They're 60 to 70%, and in Europe, 80%. So we're really doing this massive outsourcing of bookings. So why a revenue reframe? And this is where the topic of it comes in, where we're looking at like, how can yes, we know the costs. Yes, we know the concerns. Yes, we know some of the things that we're feeling around it, but looking at change of the mindset. So the mindset is out with the old and in with the new. We have to keep inventory on the OTAs at all times. And so that mentality and everything on the left side really feeds into that, what I like to call is the hamster wheel of OTA dependency, where we're looking at fueling the 60 to 70% revenue contribution. So we have to keep everything on the OTAs. And I like to say that inventory is a faucet. It is your own experience. It is your room. And so it's not Expedia's. So if that is what we own, then we can turn the faucet down and up as required. But I see many properties going, turn it off and turn it back on, turn it off and turn it back on, instead of managing it strategically. The other thing is marketing is too complicated, expensive, and unpredictable. And this is something that I hear because that's what I do. But it's about partnering with experts who show you what's working and what's not working, and then how to get that most out of your budget. And I think I have some properties with a very low budget. And so we strive to do activities that don't cost a lot, but that have significant long-lasting results. And so it's things like that where you can really, technology has made it so much more accessible, right? There's just so much more that we could be doing, and the cost of tech has come down. So our excuses are really flying out the window here. OTAs are a necessary evil. How long have we heard this? OTAs are a necessary evil. But as I said, like OTAs are a distribution lever. So we can pull it when needed. It's back to that faucet analogy. And direct bookings are nice, but not realistic at scale. And that's a lot of what I think people are feeling. It's like, I work with the OTAs because I can, high volume, but direct bookings can do exactly the same thing because it is the most profitable revenue. It allows you to put money to your bottom line to reinvest in all kinds of things at your hotel, including more marketing.
I loved your analogy, Christine, of the faucet. What people are doing is just hitting the button. It's either on or off. Okay. Love it.
Totally. So this is where we reframe for the future. So I included a few things that are happening because this is a great time because the playing field is being leveled largely by AI, but also through buyer behavior too. So increased revenue per direct booking. So in 2024, direct bookings averaged $519 per reservation, which is 60% higher than what OTAs produced at $320. Now, why is this? Because technology and systems in these hotels that benefited from this, they're doing things like add-ons, upsells, selling enhanced experience. You can't do this with OTA bookings. So you want more revenue out of the guests who are booking. Direct bookings are the way to go. And people want more experiences. So the traveler preference for direct is on the rise. And Hilton just named this year as the year of the travel maximizer. That is people who are looking to come in for a stay experience, but we've always known in hospitality that it is about experiences, but people are looking for, they really want it all. They really want to experience it all. They have this thing in their hand that they want to show the world what they're doing. So they're not taking pictures. They might take a photo of them lounging around the pool, but they also want to be having these other adventures. And I talked to some fellas from Dubai who said, our guests are coming in, they're paying less than $100. It's a luxury hostel, and they're paying less than $100 per person and $1,000 to go skydiving or base jumping. So it really is about maximizing those experiences. And then influencer partnerships. That's all on the rise. More influencers and the more social media that influencers are really changing how people make decisions. They're really influencing them. They're showing them things that they wouldn't necessarily find on the OTAs clearly, and maybe not even on the hotel website. And then advancements in technology. The technology is better. It's more accessible for revenue management, for personalization, for upselling and experiences. And it's all fairly cost effective, especially when you consider the return on investment that a lot of these tools give you. And AI agents and chatbots. So we're all going to have our own AI agent that's going to offer fast, streamlined travel information. So I can go in and say, I'm traveling with my 2 daughters. This is our budget. This is what we're looking for. It is essentially the 5-minute travel agent or less. Like the whole travel process is going to be narrowed so significantly through AI agents that understand your personal preferences. And you're going to want to make sure that as a hotelier, you know who those people are. And then we have AI SEO, which I call search everywhere optimization. So it's everything. It's voice, it's visual search, it's websites, it's blog, it's social, it's everything that you're putting out there, PR and videos that all fuel those AI recommendations. So a lot of these strategies, they don't cost a lot of money, right, Cory? Some of it is about being creative. It's about writing great blog articles. It's about shooting very amateur quality videos that people just love. And it's really putting a lot of effort into your website to make sure that, I like to say, do the thing that the OTAs can't. If they're listing everybody in a shop by price model, then really have fantastic photos on your website with great stories, deep immersive experiences that get people into your ecosystem, that they want to be in your environment, make it easy to book, and then make sure that you're just keeping those people. The retention piece is where your biggest opportunities lie for revenue. So all of this to say, you can see the shift from the OTAs and what marketing could, or what your revenue could look like. And so we'll bump to the next slide, because I created a tool that is, I call it the Reclaim Your Revenue. And in it, we have a cash calculator. And so this is for hoteliers to plug in their different market segments. I don't see this data. This is strictly confidential. It's just a tool that I created. And basically you plug in your revenue there into the yellow fields. And then you calculate your average, you input your average ADR. So your average hotel room ADR, and then it will calculate how much revenue would you save, or how much revenue could you put back into your profit line for if you just scaled back 10%, if you just scaled back 20% of your inventory, or 30. So if you're a hotel doing 60% and you want to bring it down to even 50%, this is the tool that you can use. So what would it mean if your hotel just reduced bookings by 10%? And so if you want that tool, I have it here. You can scan the QR code and get it. It's called the Reclaim Your Revenue. So it's an overall look at how to rethink your approach to the OTA, some of which I've covered here today. And yeah, it's available at any time.
Beautiful. Just a quick comment on what you talked about before. I pulled some numbers. In fact, I get into it a little bit more on my deck as well, but I'm blown away on the amount of traffic that a lot of independent hotels already have on their website.
Yes.
Staggering. That is half the battle. Just getting your guests to the front, and I use the front door of your lobby of your hotel website, and then they leave. They take off.
Yeah.
So many hotels are missing the boat big time on just creating this nice looking brochure, online brochure of the website where they could really capture that guest and they don't want to leave.
Totally agree. And in fact, 67% of guests who book on an OTA have visited a hotel website.
That's crazy.
I know.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, over half of, they visit the hotel website and the hotel website just didn't get the job done, sadly. Or they're looking to verify, or they're looking to, it's in the buyer's journey, but they still land over on the OTAs. So there's big opportunity there for hotel websites for sure.
And especially independent websites where they have the opportunity to change that. The brands are some of the worst, horrible website experiences they've got, and there's nothing they can do about it. So independents really have an opportunity to do exactly what you're talking about. And that's an unfair advantage that is being left on the table on so many levels.
Yes, that's a great way to frame it, Cory. That's really good. An unfair advantage. It is.
In speaking in terms of the framing, wanted to find out if there are any questions out there for Christine on the leisure side of this. I'm just checking our channels here to make sure that we're still cool. You know what's great about this, Christine, as we talked about before, this is live, but I'm more exciting because we're gonna slice and dice this up. This is gonna be on demand. We're quite frankly is usually where I consume my content at 0.3 speed. That's great. We can just have fun on this session, and then we'll come back if we get any questions. I will then thank you for that. By the way, that was
Yeah.
fantastic. Every time I listen to you dig in deep on that, as a creative person, usually too many numbers make my eyes bleed. But you make it a really fun and very approachable way to understand it, that a layman's or anybody can understand the math.
Yeah.
It's really important because it comes down to math and money and revenue. And sometimes I think the calculations and things can seem overwhelming, but you have a really great way of communicating that and breaking that down. And I love that calculator. Easy way for somebody to really easily determine how much you're leaving on the table.
Yes. Thanks for that, Cory. I appreciate it. I just really want people to see, we look at financial statements and what has happened, and sometimes you feel great about it and sometimes you don't. And with the cash calculator, it lets you see what's possible. It's like a future look. And if we just did this, if we just reduced by X number of rooms a day, even if it's 2, even if it's 4,
Absolutely.
it makes a big impact.
Now, a quick follow-up question to that. Did you say that many hotels calculate top line revenue and profitability is really not the main factor or the main driver? Maybe could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of hoteliers that are incentivized. They're bonused maybe on EBITDA, right? How the hotel performs in net income and all factors that they can control. So controlling on the top line is, and then that largely involved with controlling cost, labor, but distribution costs are in there. You can't escape the fact that you're paying out cash for commissions. I think a lot of hoteliers look at, well, how are we doing in revenue, total revenue, but not looking at the whole picture, especially if your hotel is seeing 60% or more in that OTA contribution piece. It's just massive. So instead of looking at top line revenue, look at your net revenue.
Yeah, you could be driving $25 million at your hotel and losing money, right?
Yes.
What's the point?
Right.
Is that a vanity metric or what?
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a feel good, right? It's like a hotelier that wants to see a full parking lot, but the rooms might be going for $5 a night.
Oh my God. Beautiful analogy. That's great. Awesome stuff.
Let's hear from you, Cory. You've got lots to say about group.
I'm still trying to digest all of what you just did there. I got my head spinning on so many different things. I'm taking some notes here, by the way. So this is a fluid moment, by the way, Christine.
Yeah.
And what I love about this conversation is that oftentimes, I've been in hospitality a long time, but more on the creative side. I was an art and creative director for quite some time and came over to where the money is when I realized really that's what the driver was. But so much of what I've learned isn't necessarily hospitality specific. And I'm taking that as oftentimes an advantage because I'm seeing in this industry, we've got a sense of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've always done it this way, itis type of thing.
Yes.
But when I come to the table, and sometimes I'll ask you because I'm not quite sure because you're a GM, you've sat in that seat before, and I throw these things out as imposter syndrome. I'm not sure. But when you say, hey, I think there's something there, or maybe you got to think about it this way. This is really, I love our conversations because you really either validate it or you tweak it a little bit. But this particular notion of a group is I feel very strongly about because not only we're doing this exact thing for our clients, know this is effective, but then there's an articles that we just wrote, and I'm going to get into that from meeting planners specifically that are saying, why aren't hotels doing this? So I know we're on the right path here. And it gets back to what I was talking about before. I think it's because it's been thought of this way. It's always been a sense of dependency. And I know a little bit about dependency. because I've got these two little ladies of mine. Can you see this slide, by the way? I'm trying to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
My college twins that are currently in Barcelona, and I'm getting, hey, dad, I need some more money from them text. But as excited as I am for their trip, I hope, and I know it's temporary, I think, I'm hoping, right? Unlike a lot of hotels that we've talked about, it's just the culture. I want to see if this is beginning to resonate. And this is a temperature check I do with some of our hoteliers. And now I'm hearing the ghosting element. A lot of them ghosting on both sides, by the way, because it's the transactional part of RFP culture, sending out proposals. There's no one-on-one communication. Now the ghosting thing has become, which I can't even fathom that, not to get a response. Burnout, commoditization, where your hotel is literally boiled down to a piece of paper with facts and figures and square footage on it, where your personality doesn't come through. Slow sales cycles, low conversion rates, reactive workflow, and it's a chaotic experience when you're not proactively approaching your day. Does this resonate? If anybody's there, I'd love to hear if some of this is beginning to sound familiar. I'm gonna move on here. So I just did a quick slice of these 5 top items: lead quality, conversion rates, sales team efficiency, cost of acquisition, and audience size. Third-party sourced, which is primarily where most hotels are getting their business. It's quantity over quality, low conversion rates, less than 5%, lot of time. My gosh, I didn't realize, Christine, I'm beginning to ask some of the other properties that we work with. Some of them have responded to thousands of RFPs and won maybe a dozen of them.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is mind-blowing to me.
Especially if those salespeople are being, I don't know how it is. I'm not as close to it as you are, but especially if one of their KPIs is their close rate, that's, pretty discouraging.
It is. And they are dependent and you don't have control, much like the OTAs. You're not in communication with them. It's opaque. You know what? You're at the mercy of whatever it boils down to. What? The lowest price?
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah.
So cost of acquisitions, commission fees, platform fees. And then here's the biggest one I want to talk on is the audience size. And this is one of the aha moments. A lot of hotels don't know what's going on. So in stark contrast, when you drive more direct business, you got higher quality leads, significantly high conversion. Some of our hotels are expressing 30 to 50%. Proactive strategy, no commissions. And here's the big one. Right now, because literally half of some hotels' potential business are not professional planners. They're not using RFP platforms, brokers to get their business. And again, I'm not saying that's not business as well. I'm just saying that there's a significant amount of business out there that don't even know what attrition is. They have no idea what ADR means. And a lot of hotels are missing out on a lot of this business. And I am one of them because at some point I'd like to plan a lure agency convention. So I've been putting my planning hat on. So I'm putting myself through the shoes of a novice planner. It's eye-opening.
Wow.
So I'm just going to touch on a quick low-hanging fruit because this is easy for anybody to go on their own website and they can see if they're missing out on this business. So as I mentioned before, non-professional planners, according to CBIT, by the way, ironically, an estimated 50 to 80% of people planning meetings are not dedicated meeting planners. That's a staggering statistic.
That's a real shift.
Yeah, ironically, that 80%, I think I heard 80% over on the other part of the presentation. I think you had mentioned, Christine, was that European OTA dependency?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, 80%. And I love 80s, but not when it's dependency. Again, the website. The foundation of your hotel online is the website. And if you look in the meetings and events pages of the site, they assume you're a professional planner. So Non-professional planner, admins, executive assistants, they've got more questions than answers. They're using Google and AI. By the way, Christine, I forgot to mention, I haven't opened Google in a week. I'm going
Oh,
straight to Chat GPT. It is what a shift.
yeah.
I'm not saying it's some crazy transformative shift, but the way generative AI is changing the way we look for things is crazy. And when you begin to understand how to prompt correctly and you leverage that, it's mind blowing. These planners are not using CBID and RFP process, and they've never heard of attrition, as I mentioned before. By the way, Michelle here is a bona fide person. This person is actively looking for a meeting space. So I used her as an illustration. So imagine Michelle's been tasked by her CEO to plan a retreat because they don't have a dedicated planner at their hotel. She has no experience, not sure where to start. She's stressed out. By the way, Christine, I learned that professional meeting planner's job is five most stressful positions out there. Imagine somebody that has no experience and now they're online to find a meeting. Michelle takes to Google meeting venues in San Diego. She finds a hotel, the wonderful and fictitious Surfrider Hotel here in San Diego. She goes to the website and she sees, she wants to reach out. She asks questions and she's prompted with what's an RFP. Most hotels, by the way, and if you want a great exercise, just go look at your own website. If you're prompted with no other way to reach out easily to your hotel and you're offering nothing but an RFP process, that's sign number one. Or you can easily go to your site. Brands, I'm sorry, you're stuck with what you got. And unfortunately, all the brands have no easy way to just simply reach out to the sales team and ask a basic question. Sad. So she has lots of questions, who like to speak to somebody, can't find testimonials, feels intimidated, stress levels skyrocket, leaves without taking action. And that's happening right now with many hotels, including independents, by the way.
I can't imagine being stressed out. Somebody in the chat here said, imagine that talk about stressed and not even knowing the unknown, don't even know the questions to ask. And yet you're responsible for however many people's, not only the meeting effectiveness, but also like their enjoyment. We think about the stress we feel as family members trying to coordinate a family and keep everybody happy. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's staggering. And I think I use this analogy of in any business that we're in, and a great exercise for anybody, especially if they're trying to sell or market themselves, is put yourself on the other side of that screen or the sales process. How would you receive that email? That cold email that asks you, how are things? How would you receive that? Would that be something that you would find of value or would that be receptive? And I think if we put ourselves through that same process, I think we'll take a sudden pause and rethink some of the things, including this process. This thing's totally broken, by the way. And it's widespread. It's just like on the OTA side, it's far overdue. And this happened a lot, obviously, during the pandemic. A lot of businesses didn't bring back their dedicated planners. And I'm going to drop some receipts a little bit later. But getting back to what I was talking about, Christine, this is staggering. One of the hotels that I pulled has got almost 70,000 uniques a month, that traffic to their website. That is a staggering amount. That's not paid. That's not Google. That's organic traffic. That's
nice
traffic going to the websites. So I'm sure you're looking at that from a leisure component going, oh my, imagine the direct booking opportunity out of that.
Yeah.
Equally, I'm looking at it from the group side and saying, okay, anywhere between 5 and 30% of that traffic is going to the meetings and events pages. So that's 3,500 uniques a month. That is a lot of Michelle's going to the meetings and events pages. That is, most businesses out there would die to have this problem of so much traffic. That's the biggest battle, is even getting this traffic to the website. But that's where the problem lies. So we're going to try this again with the Michelle. And we're going to do this a little bit differently. She goes to Google again. She finds a meeting venue in San Diego. She finds a Surfrider hotel. But instead of just an RFP form, she finds the team, she finds FAQs, she finds video resources. She has the ability to reach out and ask a basic question without filling out a 20-field RFP form. And she reaches out easily because she's confident. She feels trust. That is not a hard thing to connect with. So Michelle is relieved. No other hotels are offering it, especially the brands. She's certain she found the one because she's only considered near a hotel. She can't wait to get started. And now you've built a one-on-one relationship, or what could be a one-on-one relationship with a person that is planning a meeting with your hotel. You don't think that there's going to be some brand loyalty there, Christine?
No, I love that. Because that's familiar. That's the website experience in all other categories. So why would it be so different in group?
And maybe that's our mantra, by the way. Our next LinkedIn Live should be reframing your entire website, by the way.
Yeah. Great idea.
Hey, there we go. This is
super tactical now.
Oh, yeah. Giving ourselves a little bit of takeaway here. So this is some receipts I'm going to drop for some people here. These are the type of direct inquiries that we get for some of our partners. And as you can see, these aren't just from non-professional planners. We're seeing even high-level planners now just simply saying, hey, look, do you guys have date in the middle of the month without going through an RFP process? Not only are we able to get novice planners into the funnel earlier, but we're given an opportunity to break the barrier of the wall of friction of communication. That very first element. Simple form, first name, last name, email address, and question. That's it. Nothing more. No phone number, nothing. That equation has proven to be very effective in getting people to opt in earlier. They don't feel that it's a barrier of personal privacy issue. But as you can see here, a lot of them they're just considering their property only and no one else. And you can tell that from the questions that they're asking. In fact, oftentimes it'll just simply say, hey, we'd like to set up a site visit or talk about the details of the quote. Can we get started? So the takeaways: building strong relationships like we talked about, increasing retention and repeat, decrease that dependency in RFPs. And I'm going to underscore it one more time, not to eliminate it, but to complement it. So you're not dependent like those twins of mine. Eliminate cold calling. By the way, this is just one element of it. And this was the low-hanging fruit, but there's a lot more to the direct business that comes along with that. And the ability to not have to do the blitzes and just checking in calls. When you begin to build that proactive direct channel strategy, it eliminates the reactionary mode. Commission-free, less stress. We are rolling out some what we're calling hotel group breakouts. And these are 4 sessions that we're going to be teaching how to do this for yourself with your own sales and marketing team in a very easy, digestible, simple process that anybody can follow. We're taking the strategy and playbook right out of what's working for some of our concierge level clients. And now with AI tools, video tools, and some other things, LinkedIn obviously is a big component of it. We've got a really good strategy on how we can teach our own team to do this. If you want to learn more, you can scan that QR code. And it's also on our website under services. It's called Hotel Group Breakout. And another byproduct of that, if you see one on the testimonial here on Julie Pettit, she had mentioned that they were able to get away with less salespeople not hiring that additional person because the lead quality of their teams is so much higher now.
That's so cool.
They're not having to respond to as many RFPs. So that's a great indicator.
Cory, we have a request to display your previous slides. So the one before.
Freeze, right? Reframe in the style of the, I'm leaning into this. Reframe was your idea.
They eliminate the cold calling, like this less stress thing, right? And this constant, I can't leave until I crank these RFPs, thinking about what quality are we really providing. I've never been in a sales role, but I have friends who have, and I've heard them talk about these terms.
As a GM, Christine, did your sales teams ever deploy on a sales blitz?
Once. I know that they're still heavily scheduled, I guess you could say. But I think once we did, and I think this was 2009. So this was sales blitz era.
God, who likes to be interrupted? I just can't imagine with all the things that you and I have learned, all the people we've met on LinkedIn, all inefficiencies that we see. I was blown away to hear that some people are still deploying the sales blitz. Part of what we're going to reteach is it's not about the bricks and mortar, by the way, guys. There's thousands of beautiful venues out there to hold your meeting. And this is a great segue into my next slide, by the way, is that, in fact, we're going to end up here real quickly, is that, as I mentioned before, this is one of the things that makes me blush is when I get confirmation like this. And it was this particular article, these two in particular, dependency is killing your group business. And the number one thing hotel sales teams overlook when selling to meeting planners. It was shared. By the way, it was trending on Hospitality Net as the top performing article for an entire 3 weeks, I think. And then it was shared across with planners and hotel people, as you can see on the right. And the team is literally taken out in that RFP process, right? So if you've got a strong team on property, the team oftentimes is going to win the business. And that will eliminate price sensitivity and all the other imperfections your property might not have, by the way. Maybe it wasn't renovated, or maybe it doesn't have the 400 thread count sheets, or whatever it is that most sales teams lead with. It's not about the bricks and mortar. It's about the team. And when you rely entirely on an RFP process, you can't highlight the team. So some of the things that we're teaching our teams, how to use video along with your RFP to convert even more RFP business. So
that's solid.
Yeah, I know we're moving into this economy here where every piece of business has to be taken seriously. But when you've got both levers going, like you just mentioned on the direct business, direct bookings versus OTA, and you can use those levers effectively, you're on rails big time. So I am going to leave with that. Look at that. I thought we were getting a little bit behind. We're only 5 minutes off of that. And it looks like we did field some questions there. And if anybody's got any more, Christine, I really enjoyed it. Every time I talk to you, there's always a new spark, a new idea, a new things. And I literally think we need to host another Reframing that hotel website.
Yes, I think that was a great idea, Cory. And it is always good to talk to you. And I think that while group and leisure, there may not be a lot of intersections, at least the perception is there isn't a lot of intersection. The website is one place where we have common ground big time. People are looking for a lot of the same things. A lot of the elements are very similar and a lot of the basic principles are as well. So that would be a very cool conversation to have.
Yeah, it's interesting. Not many websites out there that I don't. I'm not scouring the internet for the best and brightest, but I always come back to this one particular example, and it's by no means a new website, but I don't know if we've talked about even the Parker Palm Springs. That is a true experience. Like you go to the website and you can feel that property. I literally went to the website. It captivated me so much that the last time I went to Palm Springs, I had to go there, and I went on there and I'm like, online experience matches the physical experience and the emotional impact and the way that they beautifully storied this itinerary concept of when you go to the homepage and it talks, it's very thoughtfully done. And I don't see hotels doing that anymore. A lot of them were, and I see a resurgence back to a beautiful shot again. And there's no story really anymore. Right. I think that's where you and I think we could dive in, and maybe we invite some other thinkers onto this and dive in deep. That would be fun.
And it's a good point that you make in terms of the online. So a lot of people think that the online experience has to be one thing and the offline experience has to be another. And that at the property. And there's no delineation anymore. As we've known for years, the experience starts when their first interaction with you, or what Google called a long time ago was the moment of truth.
Yes. Now, do you think hospitality is timid or is been afraid to go boldly, like with the brand, in fear of alienating every possible guest in their segment. And they've gone back to playing kind of more of a defensive mode where it's trying to be all things to all people. And as a still somebody that's really strong on creative and to be either bold or you're forgotten. What are your takes on that and some of your properties of like trying to really go in on brand and be that brand? And like you and I, we're not for everybody, right? We go on and say things that probably not everyone's going to say. And that's my personality and style. And at times I'm sure you probably feel the same way. I don't know if I'm going to say that. I might get pushed back. It's the same thing with a hotel, right?
Yes. I think that's the biggest reason that they're like, we just want to get as much business as we can. And so to do that, it means we have to speak to as many people as we can. And to your point, Cory, I think it's speaking directly to what that, I don't love the word persona, but you know what I mean when I say that.
Absolutely.
So I have a hotel that's in the mountains. We use the language around the mountaineer. Now, that's a broad term. That can be somebody who's climbing to the top and has spent like a multi-day hike or done whatever it might be, something on the high adventure side, or it might just be somebody who just loves the mountains. So there's this broad, but the idea of becoming something because of an experience, I think is where hotels are fearful of, because people are motivated by identity. What does it mean if I choose this? What is it status? What does it mean if I choose this product? Nike and Apple never lead with features. We talked about that. So they never lead with features. They talk about who you become when you use their products. And I think hotels, to your point, can lean into that more.
Big time. In fact, maybe we ought to, when we dig in on the website, talk about psychology a little bit.
Yeah.
And boy, I missed out on that one in college. I didn't understand the impact of buyer's behavior and the psychology and that whole element of, I use the analogy of Norm at Cheers. Gets back to the whole direct thing, which OTAs cannot win on. They cannot make you feel like Norm at Cheers. When you feel like Norm at Cheers and you walk in and that bar is yours,
yes, yeah.
He's not going to any place else except for that bar, Cheers. And it really has nothing to do with bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
So we will dig in deep on that later. This has been a fantastic first. I thought we were going to have
congrats.
Hey, we might pop on here and just have a random LinkedIn Live. This has been fun. I love this. And we've got opportunity to have 10 more people join us. So maybe we can make this a little bit of a party, so to speak.
Popcorn around all the ideas.
Exactly. So look at that. I got a final slide here. So thank you, Christine, for doing
Thank you so much for doing this with me. This has been really fun and I've learned a lot too. So thanks, Cory.
You bet. Thank you. I'm going to get working on that second one right now. And I'm going to see you a little bit later in the feed on LinkedIn and after we get caught up here. So thanks again. Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody.